Hawaii is an island state of the United States, in the Pacific Ocean about 3,200 kilometers southwest of the U.S. mainland. It is the only state not on the North American mainland, the only state that is an archipelago, and the only state in the tropics. Hawaii consists of 137 volcanic islands that comprise almost the entire Hawaiian archipelago. Spanning 2,400 kilometers, the state is physiographically and ethnologically part of the Polynesian subregion of Oceania. Hawaii's ocean coastline is consequently the fourth longest in the U.S., at about 1,210. Of the 50 U.S. states, Hawaii is the 8th smallest in land area and the 11th least populous, but with 1.4 million residents, it ranks 13th in population density. Two-thirds of Hawaii residents live on Oahu, home to the state's capital and largest city, Honolulu. Hawaii is among the country's most diverse states, owing to its central location in the Pacific and over 2 centuries of migration. As one of only 6 majority-minority states, it has the only Asian American plurality, the largest Buddhist community, and largest proportion of multiracial people in the U.S. Consequently, Hawaii is a unique melting pot of North American and East Asian cultures, in addition to its indigenous Hawaiian heritage. Settled by Polynesians sometime between 1000 and 1200 CE, Hawaii was home to numerous independent chiefdoms. In 1778, British explorer James Cook was the first known non-Polynesian to arrive at the archipelago. Early British influence is reflected in the state flag, which bears a Union Jack. An influx of European and American explorers, traders, and whalers soon arrived, leading to the decimation of the once isolated indigenous community through the introduction of diseases such as syphilis, tuberculosis, smallpox, and measles. The native Hawaiian population declined from between 300,000 and 1 million to less than 40,000 by 1890. Hawaii became a unified, internationally recognized kingdom in 1810, remaining independent until American and European businessmen overthrew the monarchy in 1893. This led to annexation by the U.S. in 1898. As a strategically valuable U.S. territory, Hawaii was attacked by Japan on December 7, 1941, which brought it global and historical significance, and contributed to America's entry into World War II. Hawaii is the most recent state to join the Union, on August 21, 1959. In 1993, the U.S. government formally apologized for its role in the overthrow of Hawaii's government, which had spurred the Hawaiian sovereignty movement and has led to ongoing efforts to obtain redress for the indigenous population. Historically dominated by a plantation economy, Hawaii remains a major agricultural exporter due to its fertile soil and uniquely tropical climate in the U.S. Its economy has gradually diversified since the mid-20th century, with tourism and military defense becoming the 2 largest sectors. The state attracts visitors, surfers, and scientists with its diverse natural scenery, warm tropical climate, abundant public beaches, oceanic surroundings, active volcanoes, and clear skies on the Big Island. Hawaii hosts the United States Pacific Fleet, the world's largest naval command, as well as 75,000 employees of the Defense Department. Hawaii's isolation results in one of the highest costs of living in the U.S. However, Hawaii is the 3rd wealthiest state, and residents have the longest life expectancy of any U.S. state, at 80.7 years. History. Hawaii is one of 2 U.S. states that were widely recognized independent nations before becoming U.S. states. The Kingdom of Hawaii was sovereign from 1810 until 1893, when resident American and European capitalists and landholders overthrew the monarchy. Hawaii was an independent republic from 1894 until August 12, 1898, when it officially became a U.S. territory. Hawaii was admitted as a U.S. state on August 21, 1959. First human settlement, ancient Hawaii. Based on archaeological evidence, the earliest habitation of the Hawaiian Islands appears to date between 1000 and 1200 CE. The first wave was probably by Polynesian settlers from the Marquesas Islands, and a second wave of migration from Raiatea and Bora Bora took place in the 11th century. The date of the human discovery and habitation of the Hawaiian Islands is the subject of academic debate. Some archaeologists and historians think it was a later wave of immigrants from Tahiti around 1000 CE who introduced a new line of high chiefs, the kapu system, the practice of human sacrifice, and the building of heiau. This later immigration is detailed in Hawaiian mythology about Peo. Other authors say there is no archaeological or linguistic evidence of a later influx of Tahitian settlers and that Peo must be regarded as a myth. The island's history is marked by a slow, steady growth in population and the size of the chiefdoms, which grew to encompass whole islands. Local chiefs, called alii, ruled their settlements, and launched wars to extend their influence and defend their communities from predatory rivals. Ancient Hawaii was a caste-based society, much like that of Hindus in India. Population growth was facilitated by ecological and agricultural practices that combined upland agriculture, ocean fishing, fish ponds, and gardening systems. These systems were upheld by spiritual and religious beliefs, like the lokahi, that linked cultural continuity with the health of the natural world. According to Hawaiian scholar Mililani Trask, the lokahi symbolizes the greatest of the traditions, values, and practices of our people. There are 3 points in the triangle: the Creator, Akua, the peoples of the earth, Kanak Maoli, and the land, the Ina. These 3 things all have a reciprocal relationship. European arrival. The 1778 arrival of British explorer Captain James Cook marked the first documented contact by a European explorer with Hawaii. Early British influence can be seen in the design of the flag of Hawaii, which bears the Union Jack in the top left corner. Cook named the archipelago the Sandwich Islands in honor of his sponsor John Montagu, 4th Earl of Sandwich, publishing the island's location and rendering the native name as Oahe. The form Oahe or Oahe is preserved in the names of certain locations in the American part of the Pacific Northwest, among them Oahe County and Oahe Mountains in Idaho, named after 3 native Hawaiian members of a trapping party who went missing in the area. Spanish explorers may have arrived in the Hawaiian Islands in the 16th century, 200 years before Cook's first documented visit in 1778. Ruy López de Villalobos commanded a fleet of 6 ships that left Acapulco in 1542 bound for the Philippines, with a Spanish sailor named Juan Gaetano aboard as pilot. Gaetano's reports describe an encounter with either Hawaii or the Marshall Islands. If López de Villalobos's crew spotted Hawaii, Gaetano would thus be the first European to see the islands. Most scholars have dismissed these claims due to a lack of credibility. Nonetheless, Spanish archives contain a chart that depicts islands at the same latitude as Hawaii, but with a longitude 10 degrees east of the islands. In this manuscript, Maui is named the Unfortunate Island, and what appears to be Hawaii Island is named the Table. Islands resembling Kahulae, Lune, and Molokai are named the Monks. For 2.5 centuries, Spanish galleons crossed the Pacific from Mexico along a route that passed south of Hawaii on their way to Manila. The exact route was kept secret to protect the Spanish trade monopoly against competing powers. Hawaii thus maintained independence, despite being on a sea route east-west between nations that were subjects of the Viceroyalty of New Spain, an empire that exercised jurisdiction over many subject civilizations and kingdoms on both sides of the Pacific. Despite such contested claims, Cook is generally considered the first European to land at Hawaii, having visited the Hawaiian Islands twice. As he prepared for departure after his second visit in 1779, a quarrel ensued as he took temple idols and fencing as firewood, and a minor chief and his group stole a boat from his ship. Cook abducted the king of Hawaii Island, Kalaniʻipiu, and held him for ransom aboard his ship to gain return of Cook's boat, as this tactic had previously worked in Tahiti and other islands. Instead, the supporters of Kalaniʻipiu attacked, killing Cook and 4 sailors as Cook's party retreated along the beach to their ship. The ship departed without retrieving the stolen boat. After Cook's visit and the publication of several books relating his voyages, the Hawaiian Islands attracted many European and American explorers, traders, and whalers, who found the islands to be a convenient harbor and source of supplies. These visitors introduced diseases to the once isolated islands, causing the Hawaiian population to drop precipitously. Native Hawaiians had no resistance to Eurasian diseases, such as influenza, smallpox, and measles. By 1820, disease, famine and wars between the chiefs killed more than half of the native Hawaiian population. During the 1850s, measles killed a fifth of Hawaii's people. Historical records indicate the earliest Chinese immigrants to Hawaii originated from Guangdong Province. A few sailors arrived in 1778 with Cook's journey, and more in 1789 with an American trader who settled in Hawaii in the late 18th century. It is said that Chinese workers introduced leprosy by 1830, and as with the other new infectious diseases, it proved damaging to the Hawaiians. Kingdom of Hawaii. During the 1780s and 1790s, chiefs often fought for power. After a series of battles that ended in 1795, all inhabited islands were subjugated under a single ruler, who became known as King Kamehameha the Great. He established the House of Kamehameha, a dynasty that ruled the kingdom until 1872. After Kamehameha II inherited the throne in 1819, American Protestant missionaries to Hawaii converted many Hawaiians to Christianity. Missionaries have argued that one function of missionary work was to civilize and purify perceived heathenism in the New World. This carried into Hawaii. According to historical archaeologist James L. Flexner, missionaries provided the moral means to rationalize conquest and wholesale conversion to Christianity. But rather than abandon traditional beliefs entirely, most native Hawaiians merged their indigenous religion with Christianity. Missionaries used their influence to end many traditional practices, including the kapu system, the prevailing legal system before European contact, and heiau, or temples to religious figures. Kapu, which typically translates to the sacred, refers to social regulations like gender and class restrictions that were based upon spiritual beliefs. Under the missionaries' guidance, laws against gambling, consuming alcohol, dancing the hula, breaking the Sabbath, and polygamy were enacted. Without the kapu system, many temples and priestly statuses were jeopardized, idols were burned, and participation in Christianity increased. When Kamehameha III inherited the throne at age 12, his advisors pressured him to merge Christianity with traditional Hawaiian ways. Under the guidance of his Kahina Nui and British allies, Hawaii turned into a Christian monarchy with the signing of the 1840 Constitution. Hiram Bingham I, a prominent Protestant missionary, was a trusted advisor to the monarchy during this period. Other missionaries and their descendants became active in commercial and political affairs, leading to conflicts between the monarchy and its restive American subjects. Missionaries from the Roman Catholic Church and from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints were also active in the kingdom, initially converting a minority of the native Hawaiian population, but later becoming the first and second largest religious denominations on the islands, respectively. Missionaries from each major group administered to the leper colony at Kalaupapa on Molokai, which was established in 1866 and operated well into the 20th century. The best known were Father Damien and Mother Mary Ann Cope, both of whom were canonized in the early 21st century as Roman Catholic saints. The death of the bachelor King Kamehameha V, who did not name an heir, resulted in the popular election of Lunalilo over Kalakaua. Lunalilo died the next year, also without naming an heir. In 1874, the election was contested within the legislature between Kalakaua and Emma, queen consort of Kamehameha IV. After riots broke out, the US and Britain landed troops on the islands to restore order. The Legislative Assembly chose King Kalakaua as monarch by a vote of 39-6 on February 12, 1874. 1887 Constitution and Overthrow Preparations. In 1887, Kalakaua was forced to sign the 1887 Constitution of the Kingdom of Hawaii. Drafted by white businessmen and lawyers, the document stripped the king of much of his authority. It established a property qualification for voting that effectively disenfranchised most Hawaiians and immigrant laborers and favored the wealthier, white elite. Resident whites were allowed to vote but resident Asians were not. As the 1887 Constitution was signed under threat of violence, it is known as the Bayonet Constitution. King Kalakaua, reduced to a figurehead, reigned until his death in 1891. His sister, Queen Liliuokalani, succeeded him. She was the last monarch of Hawaii. In 1893, Liliuokalani announced plans for a new constitution to proclaim herself an absolute monarch. On January 14, 1893, a group of mostly Euro-American business leaders and residents formed the Committee of Safety to stage a coup d'état against the kingdom and seek annexation by the United States. U.S. Government Minister John L. Stevens, responding to a request from the Committee of Safety, summoned a company of U.S. Marines. The Queen's soldiers did not resist. According to historian William Russ, the monarchy was unable to protect itself. In Hawaiian autonomy, Liliuokalani states, "If we did not by force resist their final outrage, it was because we could not do so without striking at the military force of the United States. Whatever constraint the executive of this great country may be under to recognize the present government at Honolulu has been forced upon it by no act of ours, but by the unlawful acts of its own agents. Attempts to repudiate those acts are vain." In a message to Sanford B. Dole, Liliuokalani states, "Now to avoid any collision of armed forces and perhaps the loss of life, I do under this protest, and impelled by said force, yield my authority until such time as the government of the United States shall, upon the facts being presented to it, undo the action of its representatives and reinstate me in the authority which I claim as the constitutional sovereign of the Hawaiian Islands." Overthrow of 1893, Republic of Hawaii. The treason trials of 1892 brought together the main players in the 1893 overthrow. American Minister John L. Stevens voiced support for native Hawaiian revolutionaries. William R. Castle, a Committee of Safety member, served as a defense counsel in the treason trials. Alfred Stedman Hartwell, the 1893 Annexation Commissioner, led the defense effort, and Sanford B. Dole ruled as a Supreme Court justice against acts of conspiracy and treason. On January 17, 1893, a small group of sugar and pineapple growing businessmen, aided by the American minister to Hawaii and backed by heavily armed U.S. soldiers and Marines, deposed Queen Liliuokalani and installed a provisional government composed of members of the Committee of Safety. According to scholar Lydia Qualipe and Hawaii State Representative Roy Takumai, This committee was formed against the will of indigenous Hawaiian voters, who constituted the majority of voters at the time, and consisted of 13 white men according to scholar J.K. Haulani Kauanui. The United States minister to the Kingdom of Hawaii conspired with U.S. citizens to overthrow the monarchy. After the overthrow, Sanford B. Dole, a citizen of Hawaii and cousin to James Dole, owner of Hawaiian Fruit Company, a company that benefited from the annexation of Hawaii, became president of the republic when the provisional government of Hawaii ended on July 4, 1894. Controversy ensued in the following years as the Queen tried to regain her throne. Scholar Lydia Qualipe writes that Liliuokalani had yielded under protest not to the counterfeit provisional government of Hawaii but to the superior force of the United States of America, and wrote letters of protest to the president requesting a recognizance of allyship and a reinstatement of her sovereignty against the recent actions of the provisional government of Hawaii. Following the January 1893 coup that deposed Liliuokalani, many royalists were preparing to overthrow the white-led Republic of Hawaii oligarchy. Hundreds of rifles were covertly shipped to Hawaii and hidden in caves nearby. As armed troops came and went, a Republic of Hawaii patrol discovered the rebel group. On January 6, 1895, gunfire began on both sides and later the rebels were surrounded and captured. Over the next 10 days several skirmishes occurred, until the last armed opposition surrendered or were captured. The Republic of Hawaii took 123 troops into custody as prisoners of war. The mass arrest of nearly 300 more men and women, including Queen Liliuokalani, as political prisoners was intended to incapacitate the political resistance against the ruling oligarchy. In March 1895, a military tribunal convicted 170 prisoners of treason and sentenced 6 troops to be hung by the neck until dead. According to historian Ronald Williams Jr., the other prisoners were variously sentenced to from 5 to 35 years imprisonment at hard labor, while those convicted of lesser charges received sentences from 6 months to 6 years imprisonment at hard labor. The Queen was sentenced to 5 years in prison, but spent 8 months under house arrest until she was released on parole. The total number of arrests related to the 1,895 Ko'akuloko was 406 people on a summary list of statistics, published by the government of the Republic of Hawaii. The administration of President Grover Cleveland commissioned the Blount Report, which concluded that the removal of Liliuokalani had been illegal. Commissioner Blount found the U.S. and its minister guilty on all counts including the overthrow, the landing of the Marines, and the recognition of the provisional government. In a message to Congress, Cleveland wrote, "And finally, but for the lawless occupation of Honolulu under false pretexts by the United States forces, and but for Minister Stevens' recognition of the provisional government when the United States forces were its sole support and constituted its only military strength, the Queen and her government would never have yielded to the provisional government, even for a time, and for the sole purpose of submitting her case to the enlightened justice of the United States. By an act of war, committed with the participation of a diplomatic representative of the United States and without authority of Congress, the government of a feeble but friendly and confiding people has been overthrown. A substantial wrong has thus been done which a due regard for our national character as well as the rights of the injured people requires we should endeavor to repair. The provisional government has not assumed a republican or other constitutional form, but has remained a mere executive council or oligarchy, set up without the assent of the people. It has not sought to find a permanent basis of popular support and has given no evidence of an intention to do so. The U.S. government first demanded that Queen Liliuokalani be reinstated, but the provisional government refused. On December 23, 1893, the response from the provisional government of Hawaii, authored by President Sanford B. Dole, was received by Cleveland's representative minister Albert S. Willis and emphasized that the provisional government of Hawaii unhesitatingly rejected the demand from the Cleveland administration. Congress conducted an independent investigation, and on February 26, 1894, submitted the Morgan Report, which found all parties, including Minister Stevens with the exception of the Queen, not guilty and not responsible for the coup. Partisans on both sides of the debate questioned the accuracy and impartiality of both the Blount and Morgan reports over the events of 1893. In 1993, Congress passed a joint apology resolution regarding the overthrow. It was signed by President Bill Clinton. The resolution apologized and said that the overthrow was illegal in the following phrase: the Congress on the occasion of the 100th anniversary of the illegal overthrow of the Kingdom of Hawaii on January 17, 1893, acknowledges the historical significance of this event, which resulted in the suppression of the inherent sovereignty of the native Hawaiian people. The apology resolution also acknowledges that the overthrow of the Kingdom of Hawaii occurred with the active participation of agents and citizens of the United States, and further acknowledges that the native Hawaiian people never directly relinquished to the United States their claims to their inherent sovereignty as a people over their national lands, either through the Kingdom of Hawaii or through a plebiscite or referendum. Annexation, Territory of Hawaii. After William McKinley won the 1896 U.S. presidential election, advocates pressed to annex the Republic of Hawaii. The previous president, Grover Cleveland, was a friend of Queen Liliuokalani. McKinley was open to persuasion by U.S. expansionists and by annexationists from Hawaii. He met with three non-native annexationists, Loren A. Thurston, Francis March Hatch and William Ansel Kinney. After negotiations in June 1897, Secretary of State John Sherman agreed to a treaty of annexation with these representatives of the Republic of Hawaii. The U.S. Senate never ratified the treaty. Despite the opposition of most native Hawaiians, the Newlands Resolution was used to annex the Republic to the U.S., it became the Territory of Hawaii. The Newlands Resolution was passed by the House on June 15, 1898, by 209 votes in favor to 91 against, and by the Senate on July 6, 1898, by a vote of 42 to 21. A majority of native Hawaiians opposed annexation, voiced chiefly by Liliuokalani, whom Hawaiian Hananike Trask described as beloved and respected by her people. Liliuokalani wrote, "It had not entered into our hearts to believe that these friends and allies from the United States would ever go so far as to absolutely overthrow our form of government, seize our nation by the throat, and pass it over to an alien power in her retelling of the overthrow of her government." According to Trask, newspapers at the time argued Hawaiians would suffer virtual enslavement under annexation, including further loss of lands and liberties, in particular to sugar plantation owners. These plantations were protected by the U.S. Navy as economic interests, justifying a continued military presence in the islands. In 1900, Hawaii was granted self-governance and retained Iolani Palace as the territorial capital building. Despite several attempts to become a state, Hawaii remained a territory for 60 years. Plantation owners and capitalists, who maintained control through financial institutions such as the Big Five, found territorial status convenient because they remained able to import cheap, foreign labor. Such immigration and labor practices were prohibited in many states. Puerto Rican immigration to Hawaii began in 1899, when Puerto Rico's sugar industry was devastated by a hurricane, causing a worldwide shortage of sugar and a huge demand for sugar from Hawaii. Hawaiian sugarcane plantation owners began to recruit experienced, unemployed laborers in Puerto Rico. Two waves of Korean immigration to Hawaii occurred in the 20th century. The first wave arrived between 1903 and 1924, the second wave began in 1965 after President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965, which removed racial and national barriers and resulted in significantly altering the demographic mix in the U.S. Oahu was the target of a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor by Imperial Japan on December 7, 1941. The attack on Pearl Harbor and other military and naval installations, carried out by aircraft and by midget submarines, brought the United States into World War II. Political changes of 1954, State of Hawaii. In the 1950s, the plantation owners' power was broken by the descendants of immigrant laborers, who were born in Hawaii and were U.S. citizens. They voted against the Hawaii Republican Party, strongly supported by plantation owners. The new majority voted for the Democratic Party of Hawaii, which dominated territorial and state politics for more than 40 years. Eager to gain full representation in Congress and the Electoral College, residents actively campaigned for statehood. In Washington, there was talk that Hawaii would be a Republican Party stronghold. As a result, the admission of Hawaii was matched with the admission of Alaska, which was seen as a Democratic Party stronghold. These predictions proved inaccurate. As of 2017, Hawaii generally votes Democratic, while Alaska typically votes Republican. During the Cold War, Hawaii became an important site for U.S. cultural diplomacy, military training, research, and as a staging ground for the U.S. war in Vietnam. In March 1959, Congress passed the Hawaii Admissions Act, which U.S. President Dwight D. Eisenhower signed into law. 143 The act excluded Palmyra Atoll from statehood. It had been part of the Kingdom and Territory of Hawaii. On June 27, 1959, a referendum asked residents of Hawaii to vote on the statehood bill. 94% voted in favor of statehood and 5.7% opposed it. 144 The referendum asked voters to choose between accepting the act and remaining a U.S. territory. The United Nations Special Committee on Decolonization later removed Hawaii from its list of non-self-governing territories. After attaining statehood, Hawaii quickly modernized through construction and a rapidly growing tourism economy. Later, state programs promoted Hawaiian culture. The Hawaii State Constitutional Convention of 1978 created institutions such as the Office of Hawaiian Affairs to promote indigenous language and culture. Legacy of annexation on Hawaiian land. In 1897, over 21,000 natives, representing the overwhelming majority of adult Hawaiians, signed anti-annexation petitions in one of the first examples of protest against the overthrow of Queen Liliuokalani's government. Nearly 100 years later, in 1993, 17,000 Hawaiians marched to demand access and control over Hawaiian trust lands and as part of the modern Hawaiian sovereignty movement. Hawaiian trust land ownership and use is still widely contested as a consequence of annexation. According to scholar Winona LaDuke, as of 2015, 95% of Hawaii's land was owned or controlled by just 82 landholders, including over 50% by federal and state governments, as well as the established sugar and pineapple companies. The 30-meter telescope is planned to be built on Hawaiian trust land, but has faced resistance as the project interferes with Kanak indigeneity. Population. According to the 2020 United States Census, Hawaii had a population of 1,500,000. The state's population identified as Asian, multiracial, white, Native Hawaiians and other Pacific Islanders, Hispanic and Latinos of any race, Black or African American, from some other race, and Native American and Alaskan Native. Hawaii has the highest percentage of Asian Americans and multiracial Americans and the lowest percentage of white Americans of any state. It is the only state where people who identify as Asian Americans are the largest ethnic group. In 2012, 15% of the resident population under age 1 was non-Hispanic white. Hawaii's Asian population consists mainly of 198,000 Filipino Americans, 185,000 Japanese Americans, roughly 55,000 4% Chinese Americans, and 24,000 Korean Americans. Over 120,000 Hispanic and Latino Americans live in Hawaii. Mexican Americans number over 35,000, Puerto Ricans exceed 44,000. Multiracial Americans constitute almost 25% of Hawaii's population, exceeding 320,000 people. Hawaii is the only state to have a triracial group as its largest multiracial group, one that includes white, Asian, and Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander. The non-Hispanic white population numbers around 310,000, just over 20% of the population. The multiracial population outnumbers the non-Hispanic white population by about 10,000 people. In 1970, the Census Bureau reported Hawaii's population was 39% white and 58% Asian and Pacific Islander. There are more than 80,000 indigenous Hawaiians, 6% of the population. Including those with partial ancestry, Samoan Americans constitute 3% of Hawaii's population, and Tongan Americans constitute 1%. The 5 largest European ancestries in Hawaii are German, Irish, English, Portuguese and Italian. About 82% of the state's residents were born in the United States. Roughly 75% of foreign-born residents originate from Asia. Hawaii is a majority-minority state. It was expected to be one of 3 states that would not have a non-Hispanic white plurality in 2014, the other 2 are California and New Mexico. The third group of foreigners to arrive in Hawaii were from China. Chinese workers on Western trading ships settled in Hawaii starting in 1789. In 1820, the first American missionaries arrived to preach Christianity and teach the Hawaiians Western ways. As of 2015, a large proportion of Hawaii's population have Asian ancestry, especially Filipino, Japanese and Chinese. Many are descendants of immigrants brought to work on the sugarcane plantations in the mid to late 19th century. The first 153 Japanese immigrants arrived in Hawaii on June 19, 1868. They were not approved by the then current Japanese government because the contract was between a broker and the Tokugawa shogunate, by then replaced by the Meiji Restoration. The first Japanese current government-approved immigrants arrived on February 9, 1885, after Kalakawa's petition to Emperor Meiji when Kalakawa visited Japan in 1881. Almost 13,000 Portuguese migrants had arrived by 1899, they also worked on the sugarcane plantations. By 1901, more than 5,000 Puerto Ricans were living in Hawaii. Languages. English and Hawaiian are listed as Hawaii's official languages in the state's 1978 Constitution, in Article 15, Section 4. However, the use of Hawaiian is limited because the Constitution specifies that Hawaiian shall be required for public acts and transactions only as provided by law. Hawaii Creole English, locally referred to as Pidgin, is the native language of many native residents and is a second language for many others. As of the 2000 census, 74% of Hawaii residents age 5 and older exclusively speak English at home. According to the 2008 American Community Survey, 75% of Hawaii's residents older than 5 speak only English at home. In their homes, 21% of state residents speak an additional Asian language, 2.5% speak Spanish, 2% speak other Indo-European languages and 0.1% speak another language. After English, other languages popularly spoken in the state are Tagalog, Ilocano, and Japanese. 185.4% of residents speak Tagalog, which includes non-native speakers of Filipino, a Tagalog-based national and co-official language of the Philippines, Japanese and Ilocano, Chinese, Hawaiian, Spanish, Korean, and Samoan. Hawaiian. The Hawaiian language has about 2,000 native speakers, about 0.1% of the total population. According to the United States Census, there were more than 24,000 total speakers of the language in Hawaii in 2006 to 2008. Hawaiian is a Polynesian member of the Austronesian language family. It is closely related to other Polynesian languages, such as Marquesan, Tahitian, Maori, Rapa Nui, and less closely to Samoan and Tongan. According to Schutz, the Marquesans colonized the archipelago in roughly 300 CE and were later followed by waves of seafarers from the Society Islands, Samoa, and Tonga. These Polynesians remained in the islands. They eventually became the Hawaiian people and their languages evolved into the Hawaiian language. Kimura and Wilson say, linguists agree that Hawaiian is closely related to Eastern Polynesian, with a particularly strong link in the southern Marquesas, and a secondary link in Tahiti, which may be explained by voyaging between the Hawaiian and Society Islands. Before the arrival of Captain James Cook, the Hawaiian language had no written form. That form was developed mainly by American Protestant missionaries between 1820 and 1826 who assigned to the Hawaiian phonemes letters from the Latin alphabet. Interest in Hawaiian increased significantly in the late 20th century. With the help of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, specially designated immersion schools in which all subjects would be taught in Hawaiian were established. The University of Hawaii developed a Hawaiian language graduate studies program. Municipal codes were altered to favor Hawaiian place and street names for new civic developments. Hawaiian distinguishes between long and short vowel sounds. In modern practice, vowel length is indicated with a macron. Hawaiian language newspapers published from 1834 to 1948 and traditional native speakers of Hawaiian generally omit the marks in their own writing. The okina and kahako are intended to capture the proper pronunciation of Hawaiian words. 194 The Hawaiian language uses the glottal stop as a consonant. It is written as a symbol similar to the apostrophe or left-hanging single quotation mark. Hawaiian Pidgin. Some residents of Hawaii speak Hawaii Creole English, endemically called Pidgin or Pidgin English. The lexicon of HCE derives mainly from English but also uses words that have derived from Hawaiian, Chinese, Japanese, Portuguese, Ilocano, and Tagalog. During the 19th century, the increase in immigration mainly from China, Japan, Portugal especially from the Azores and Madeira, and Spain catalyzed the development of a hybrid variant of English known to its speakers as Pidgin. By the early 20th century, Pidgin speakers had children who acquired it as their first language. HCE speakers use some Hawaiian words without those words being considered archaic. Most place names are retained from Hawaiian, as are some names for plants and animals. For example, tuna fish is often called by its Hawaiian name, ahi. HCE speakers have modified the meanings of some English words. For example, auntie and uncle may either refer to any adult who is a friend or be used to show respect to an elder. Syntax and grammar follow distinctive rules different from those of general American English. For example, instead of "it is hot today, isn't it?" an HCE speaker would say simply "stay hot." The term "dekine" is used as a filler, a substitute for virtually any word or phrase. During the surfing boom in Hawaii, HCE was influenced by surfer slang. Some HCE expressions, such as bra and dekine, have found their ways elsewhere through surfing communities. Hawaii Sign Language, a sign language for the deaf based on the Hawaiian language, has been in use in the islands since the early 1800s. It is dwindling in numbers due to American Sign Language supplanting HSL through schooling and various other domains. Religion. Hawaii is among the most religiously diverse states in the U.S., with 1 in 10 residents practicing a non-Christian faith. Roughly 1/4 to half the population identify as unaffiliated and non-religious, making Hawaii one of the most secular states as well. Christianity remains the majority religion, represented mainly by various Protestant groups and Roman Catholicism. The second largest religion is Buddhism, which comprises a larger proportion of the population than in any other state. It is concentrated in the Japanese community. Native Hawaiians continue to engage in traditional religious and spiritual practices today, often adhering to Christian and traditional beliefs at the same time. The Cathedral Church of St. Andrew in Honolulu was formerly the seat of the Hawaiian Reformed Catholic Church, a province of the Anglican Communion that had been the state church of the Kingdom of Hawaii. It subsequently merged into the Episcopal Church in the 1890s following the overthrow of the Kingdom of Hawaii, becoming the seat of the Episcopal Diocese of Hawaii. The Cathedral Basilica of Our Lady of Peace and the Co-Cathedral of St. Teresa of the Child Jesus serve as seats of the Roman Catholic Diocese of Honolulu. The Eastern Orthodox community is centered around the Saints Constantine and Helen Greek Orthodox Cathedral of the Pacific. The largest religious denominations by membership were the Roman Catholic Church with 249,619 adherents in 2010, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints with 68,128 adherents in 2009, the United Church of Christ with 115 congregations and 20,000 members, and the Southern Baptist Convention with 108 congregations and 18,000 members. Non-denominational churches collectively have 128 congregations and 32,000 members. Economy. The history of Hawaii's economy can be traced through a succession of dominant industries: sandalwood, whaling, sugarcane, pineapple, the military, tourism and education. By the 1840s, sugar plantations had gained a strong foothold in the Hawaiian economy, due to a high demand of sugar in the United States and rapid transport via steamships. Sugarcane plantations were tightly controlled by American missionary families and businessmen known as the Big Five, who monopolized control of the sugar industry's profits. By the time Hawaiian annexation was being considered in 1898, sugarcane producers turned to cultivating tropical fruits like pineapple, which became the principal export for Hawaii's plantation economy. Since statehood in 1959, tourism has been the largest industry, contributing 24% of the gross state product in 1997, despite efforts to diversify. The state's gross output for 2003 was US $47 billion. Per capita income for Hawaii residents in 2014 was US $54,516. Hawaiian exports include food and clothing. These industries play a small role in the Hawaiian economy, due to the shipping distance to viable markets, such as the west coast of the United States. The state's food exports include coffee, macadamia nuts, pineapple, livestock, sugarcane, and honey. By weight, honeybees may be the state's most valuable export. According to the Hawaii Agricultural Statistics Service, agricultural sales were US $370.9 million from diversified agriculture, US $100.6 million from pineapple, and US $64.3 million from sugarcane. Hawaii's relatively consistent climate has attracted the seed industry, which is able to test 3 generations of crops per year on the islands, compared with 1 or 2 on the mainland. Seeds yielded US $264 million in 2012, supporting 1,400 workers. As of December 2015, the state's unemployment rate was 3%. In 2009, the United States military spent US $12.2 billion in Hawaii, accounting for 18% of spending in the state for that year. 75,000 United States Department of Defense personnel live in Hawaii. According to a 2013 study by Phoenix Marketing International, Hawaii at that time had the fourth largest number of millionaires per capita in the United States, with a ratio of 7%. Culture. The Aboriginal culture of Hawaii is Polynesian. Hawaii represents the northernmost extension of the vast Polynesian Triangle of the South and Central Pacific Ocean. While traditional Hawaiian culture remains as vestiges in modern Hawaiian society, there are reenactments of the ceremonies and traditions throughout the islands. Some of these cultural influences, including the popularity in greatly modified form of law and hula, are strong enough to affect the wider United States.